Okay, well, very excited to have Kanetix with us today for another Gamma Partner Artist Feature podcast. Kanetix has a really interesting story. He's brought quite the gamut of art to Bitcoin now. Obviously, like initially known as a generative artist, but he brought quite an interesting additions release of late. I know that he's been working very, very hard on an upcoming. I guess we'll talk more about it in a bit. A conversation about Ascension, which is to do with light waves. But enough from me, Kinetics. A pleasure to have you. I'd like for you to start from the very start. Maybe it was even when you were a child. Like, when did you first start feeling creative? Really dig into the journey onto how you got here, perhaps how you got into Bitcoin. How did you get into creating Bitcoin art, generative art, coding? Go for it.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I've been looking forward to this for a while, so thank you. Um, phew, where did it start? For me, it, art probably started in like middle school, just like drawing. I just enjoyed to draw, and so um, it was like pencils, like colored pencils. Like I found that just worked really well for me, and so a lot of it was like superheroes. And it's so funny because I was looking at them the other day. Like I got a folder from like middle school of all my stuff. But like like superheroes, I would like see pictures and I'd try to like replicate it or like do different poses and things like that. And so um, it kind of started from there. Um, and then it just allowed me to kind of express myself. And so I really enjoyed that. Um, and then from there, it kind of expanded into like middle school, like in high school, like painting. Was doing some like graffiti art stuff. Got into that for a little bit, and just all kinds of different stuff. I just enjoyed to create. I love so many different things, which sometimes makes it a little difficult for me because I just love so much. Um, but it was a hobby, and I think, man, if I could go back, my art teacher, because I took art in high school. And my art teacher told me, she's like, I can get you a full ride if you want to do art for college. She's like, hands down. She goes, you work with me for like a year, and she goes, I can get you a full ride. And I was like, no, I didn't want to do it, like, because I was into sports, I played sports and all that stuff. And it was more of just something I enjoyed to do on the side occasionally. Not, I wasn't thinking like, oh, this could be a profession. Um, but yeah, if I could go back and kick myself in the butt, I'd be like, dude, take her up on it. But yeah, so it's since then I've just always had this passion for creativity, and same thing. Went into college and took some art classes in college. Nothing fancy, just some of that. And throughout my life, it's funny when I look back now, I see what I was doing, but I didn't realize it at the time. Like I enjoyed to just like paint the inside of my house. I can't tell you how many times I did that just because it's painting, right? It's allowing you to somewhat like create and change your space. Or, I like designing things, or, I've always enjoyed like fixing the flower beds at the house or things like that, right? There's just so many different ways you can be creative. And so I was kind of scratching this itch in so many different ways, kind of just never realizing like that's what I was really passionate about. And so like I've done some like wood art. We have one like huge one hanging up in the family room. It's probably like, I don't know, 8 feet by like 4 feet that I did really big. It's like different pieces of wood coming out and I painted it. Um, so I just love to explore art. Um, and then got into um, I got into crypto in like early 2020. So I was doing like penny stocks for a while. I got bored with that. And so I'm like, oh, and then I was hearing about crypto. I'm like, oh, let me try crypto out. And so I got into crypto, and then that naturally evolved into NFTs. Um, and like that was my place. Like I'm like, oh my God, I found my people. Like this is my thing. Because I've always enjoyed to collect kind of throughout my life, different stuff. Um, but like I've always been hugely into like video games, like tech, kind of like graffiti art, kind of that like anon type thing. And so it was like this just perfect like mesh of like all these different things that like felt like it was me. And so I just kind of jumped in with both feet. And then yeah, so I was knee deep in the the ETH craze. And so that was a lot of fun, but crazy. Um, and I actually started building a collection on ETH, and I was finishing up right when like the market was tanking. And so I put it on the shelf, and I've never done anything with it. Maybe one day I will. Um, but so kind of, yeah, shelved it, and then we was just continuing to collect. And then um, I've been a holder in Asprey Studio and was a mod in there for a while. So I know a lot of great people in there. And so one of my friends in there got wind of ordinals. And so like this was like very early on ordinals. Um, so we started looking into it. And so yeah, so I jumped into ordinals and um, just love so many different things about it. Like I love like rare sats is really cool. I just enjoy the the functionality of Bitcoin and how it works, how you're kind of just putting code on chain. Because I built a smart contract and that was a pain in the ass. So like I didn't enjoy that. Um, but so it's very not elegant, elegant to me. And so it just kind of like hit all those special things for me. And I'm like, it something that was just like it kind of just made that fire me burn even a little bit more. And I'm like, I want to put something on this chain. And so so I picked it back up and started working on Lightwaves and then developing. I mean, really, kind of even before I got the Lightwaves, I started developing this idea behind the whole Lightwave series, which really, I kind of got to give credit a little bit to like Artifact back on ETH. Like that was like my number one project. I was like heavily into Artifact, monoliths, like all that stuff, and it was because I really enjoyed the storyline to it. Like that's what drew me in, like these aliens and like they had the monoliths and all this different stuff and like what a missed opportunity. Like if they could have developed that story out like that, I mean that was like my dream project. So um, I felt like this space, just Web3 in general, like needed something like that. And that's something like I craved and like thirst for. So I'm like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna create that. And so that's kind of where it started.
Yeah, there's so many things that we need to talk about there. I'm super curious. I'd love to go back. It's kind of interesting to me. I was the same. I never got offered an opportunity with my art from a teacher, so they clearly didn't see what they saw in you. I still enjoyed it. I remember in year 9, I took painting and photography as electives, and I had a great time. And I wasn't very artistic. My mum was, actually, but we were just a sport family. Every night, every weekend day, one of
That was
those
us.
families.
Yeah.
And, if you think back, you had that teacher give you that opportunity, and life happens, but tell us about, like, it might be a little bit tricky because you have to give yourself a pat on the back here, but what do you think she saw in you? Like, what were you creating in school? You must have had that talent, which we're seeing now on Bitcoin, back then. And like you said, you've created and you've got artwork with, woodwork up in the, and you graffiti, all of these different things. But, go back and tell us about that artistic period of your life. What do you remember of it?
Yeah. So it was just, I think like for me, like I'm a very emotional person. By that I'm being like I don't like cry all the time and stuff like that. But like I feel things very deeply. That's just how I've always been. And so um, through the years, I've learned to embrace that, not kind of push that away. And so, um, but growing up, it's hard growing up sometimes, right? And I had my struggles, and it just art allowed me to express what I was feeling inside really, really well. It was an amazing outlet for me. And so I don't know, maybe I think when you do anything with 100% of who you are, right? And like we all have talents, and I think we all have something meaningful to give to this world. And maybe that's mine. I don't know. I like to think it is. Um, but I feel like when you're doing what you're called to do, it just I think people see it, people recognize it, and so maybe that's what it was. But I remember, so I like back then I could, because again I was like always really like pencils and like stuff like that. So I have like the like charcoal pencils and stuff like that, and I drew um it was like a marble statue, kind of like David, but and I did like the shading and like all that really well. And I remember it was after I turned that in for a project. I remember that's when she told me. So she must have saw something maybe in that specific piece, or maybe it was a combination of pieces I turned in during that course. But yeah, I don't know.
Do you still have any of that artwork with you?
I do. I have
Wow.
it all.
Oh,
Um,
awesome.
because I have like everything from high school, so it's in the garage and like a couple trunks. Um, so yeah, I have it all.
And
Um,
what about your own children? Like, do you nurture them artistically, in different ways, or whether it be going to art galleries or just kind of like helping them if their curiosity is piqued when they pick up a pencil or a crayon or a paintbrush?
so yeah, my daughter she's like my little mini me. She like looks like me, she acts like me, like she is me to a T. Um, and so she loves art. So I've really been trying to nurture that, but not in a way that's like forcing. Because then, because I had like like we were a sports family, and like sometimes when you get pushed so hard, because we did sports all year and like everything, kind of gets not fun sometimes. And so I remember growing up having some moments like that where I was doing things because I kind of felt forced to do it and I wasn't really having fun anymore. And so I don't want her to experience that. So I just try to support it. And sometimes when she wants to do it, great. She doesn't, she doesn't. But she loves art. And so we like look at NFTs and she looks at my stuff. I've actually inscribed on Bitcoin her art. She's in fourth grade now. So like kindergarten, I think through third grade, her art I've put on there and like a little thing for her. And so, yeah, so I do that. But yeah, I mean, with seeing how she's acting and how we're so similar, yeah, I could see her doing something with that and her being happy with it. So it's something I watch and I try to cultivate, and kind of flame when I can, but without going too far because again, she's in fourth grade.
I
So
100%, I 100% feel you. Yeah, and then on that note, is how do you explain what you do? Because obviously you and I have a very nuanced understanding of art on Bitcoin, but it's so foreign, really, to so many people. Uh, and you create. Well, obviously, actually, I mentioned it before, not just with code, but I guess initially, generative art, code art, these, incredible collections in terms of radio waves and light waves, and, planning for ascension. Um, yeah, like, I guess what drew you to that, but then how do you explain it? And what do what does your daughter think of it? Or what does your wife or your friends think about it?
uh, the wife has a bittersweet relationship with it right now because you know it's been a tough market, and so I haven't been working, so I've started looking for work again, um, which I understand, right? And so she's kind of in a weird place with it, but it's also brought us a lot of things as well. So I think she understands that as well. But we're just, it's kind of a tough spot. So she's a little with it right now. Um, I've tried to explain it to my parents. They have no idea. It's like talking to a brick wall. So I've tried to go through it with them, but it's not great. But they're interested and they hear me out with stuff, but they don't really get it. Um, my daughter gets it surprisingly. I think maybe it's because of her age, but she understands. But like we'll look at collections online and things like that, and so she high level gets it. Um, honestly, like and with friends, I I I've had a lot of work friends and things like that, but like since like COVID and things like that, like I don't know, we all kind of got displaced a little bit. So I feel like right now, like a lot of the people I talk to are like really on Web3. I have some friends kind of outside of it that I do that I've talked a little bit about, but you can pick up cues that it's kind of not their thing, and the conversations don't really go anywhere. So I kind of don't broach that subject with them too much, just because they don't understand. So it's weird, but I don't know. My Web3 people are my people, right? I feel like you guys are my family. So like I talk with everybody more than enough with all that. So I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Look, I think that that's a beautiful segue just into that topic alone. Is that it is interesting, you know. We have people would say, pardon me, people would say we have these separate lives, but really it's just like our life and just different components of our life. And you know, you and I are on different parts of the world. We're having a conversation right now, which is being, you know, recorded and people will be able to watch it. We interact, you know, through work. I work at Gamma and you're one of our partner artists, which is, you know, super awesome and we love your work. You know, this space really opens up this kind of like global art market, this global community. And like you said, you know, it becomes like a family or it becomes like a deep friendship. And that must be very inspiring for an artist.
It is. Yeah, I've met some truly amazing people. Uh, Hands down, I would say uh, probably my best friend I've met in this space um, right now, my buddy JPEGs. Like best friend, we chat sometimes on the phone, like extremely personal. Like we know personal stuff. We're there to support each other. Just a great guy. And there's so many other amazing people like that I consider like true friends in this space, which I guess for people our age maybe is a little weird for us, right? Because we've seen this like huge change, right? This huge way that life is like, back in the day, like you didn't have cell phones, right? Like I remember like when we got our first computer, right? So like so where everything is gone is kind of crazy, but also I get it too, right? It's a natural progression of things. I think as we move through things, and um, I just think it's a logical step, right? It kind of makes the world smaller, and so um, the only thing I hate is you don't get that personal face-to-face time with them, because there is something about face-to-face interaction. The couple NFT events I've been able to go to, like it's always so nice to be able to put a face with people and be able to like connect physically, like face to face. There's just something about that, and so um, that's where I think like going to events is so critical for people in our space, is because like those are your opportunities to get together with your friends and just hang out, and I think it strengthens those bonds. So um, yeah.
I couldn't agree more. 100%. You know, humans definitely, I guess, like intrinsically crave connection. Like we grew up
Yes.
in tribes. You know, we go back thousands of years. And it's interesting how these kind of like new tribes are formed, and of course that like physical interaction is really important. It's actually another reason. I'm giving myself a pat on the back here. Why I think these podcasts are super important. We can move past this point quickly, but it's because people need to realize that behind the PFP, there's an artist or a human being. You know, I
Yeah.
think sometimes in this space, it's so fast paced and it's so digital, we forget that everyone is actually a human being logging on to these apps. Um, and I think also that that's quite fascinating if you're creating back, you know, before inscriptions, before ordinals, NFTs, you're kind of like creating in these decentralized systems, and that means like that there's lots of different sorts of people who bring all sorts of different things, and like you said, you know, you bring like a lot of emotion, and that's like admirable and healthy, I think. And so there's always a human behind the creation. Do you think that that sort of decentralized global, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but almost like tribe slash community environment in which Web3 is, influences the way in which you create?
That's interesting. Um, I would have to say yes. I think because definitely everything we experience, I think alters who we are and it affects us in some way. So I would definitely say yes. How much? I don't know. I think like for me in my creating, like I can only speak for me. Um, it's it's a product of everything over my 44 years on this earth. It's all of that. It's all the things I've loved and am passionate about, and like I love space, and so that's why everything, a lot of it's space driven, and just all these different things that just I love and have loved in my life. Have kind of driven me to this. But yeah, I would say definitely say, the environment and the culture that we're in, absolutely, right? It shapes where we're at, and I think some of the things that we do, um, specifically for like Bitcoin, um, there's just unique things you can do on Bitcoin from like endpoints and things like that I've incorporated in my art or have thought about, oh, this would be really cool to do, which takes me down a journey of maybe something I wouldn't have gone down if it hadn't been for those sad endpoints on Bitcoin. So yeah, definitely it does for sure. To what extent, it probably varies per thing I'm doing. But I would say definitely sometimes heavily, and others maybe not as much, but it's a full range.
Yeah, it's always an interesting question to ask because I've heard Jack Butcher, who you would have heard of course, and Schmipto, who you may or may not have heard of, but he's a good friend of Jack's and big collector of his, but also
Yeah.
quite a pioneer in the space in different ways, and also manages an estate of quite a famous, really early computer artist called Bob Mallory, which
I was
it's Bob
buying his
Mallory.
stuff on from him when he was first releasing it. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
terrific. And they've
Yeah.
talked so much about these kind of like networks and these decentralized networks and how influential it is over where they see the space going, and also how this kind of like scarcity mindset's really like overblown and it's very much collector driven and it's not the way that the space should be heading. And I find that sort of stuff really inspiring. So yeah, I'm always curious to find out, what the artists, who we work with and other artists all think about that, because it really is this ongoing journey. So on that note, I've pulled up some of your collections and we'll have a look at them. But when you created on ETH, so actually love, because a lot of people started elsewhere. That's the thing, it's not like ordinals came out and then all of a sudden people started creating art digitally or art on Bitcoin. For some, interestingly, it was the first time, but for a lot, it wasn't. A lot of people started on Tezos or ETH or Solana or elsewhere. Tell us about your entry into ETH art. And then you mentioned that it was with Asprey where you heard about. Shout out Asprey, by the way. Shout out Alistair and the team there. You mentioned you found out about ordinals. Obviously, I'd love for you to kind of like go back to like what really like piqued your interest there. But first, who was Kanetix? Were you Kanetix on ETH? Or is
Mhm.
Kanetix a Bitcoin
Oh,
artist?
yeah, it is. Yeah. Like if you
Yeah.
go into OpenSea and you look at Kanetix, I got my hot wallet and then my Kanetix vault. Yeah.
Oh wow, cool, cool, cool. I honestly need to have a look. I hadn't. Normally, I would.
Yeah.
So yeah, tell us about what drew you to creating on ETH. What were you creating on ETH? Has there been a shift in the way you create once you found out about art on Bitcoin?
So yeah, so the only thing I created on ETH was that one project that I didn't launch, and it was it also had like a story component to it as well. There was like this secret society. What was it called? The Golden Circle. It was what this like secret society was, which is kind of funny because it's kind of like a Bitcoin, I guess, right? Golden Circle. Um, but so it's kind of, there was a secret society through that, and it was, the idea behind it was, and I and this was all worked out, and it worked. Um, you would, and I actually have one of them on, I think my one of ones, like the spinning Bitcoin one, that's from that. And so I did one for like Bitcoin, Solana, Ethereum, and BNB. Those were like the four crypto coins to start. And what you would do is you would buy like a crap ton of that currency. So what I did was I looked at, I can't remember all the specifics, but it was like based on month over month average. So a Bitcoin, you would obviously have to have a lot more of it. And then I think Solana at the time was maybe the cheapest. Yeah, so like that's one of the secret symbols on the backside of that from the golden circle that I made. And so the intent was it was to mirror real life. And so it was month to month. So each day that you could mint those cryptos represent a month. So every day the amount changed. And if you didn't get that supply, there was a set supply each day. And if the set supply for the day wasn't completely bought, it was just done for, like no more. And so then that went on for 30 days. And like I think the Bitcoin, like some of them to have like the full Bitcoin, I think you needed like 32,000. Oh, that's what it was. I created fiat to start, and you can mint fiat. It was for like point like 0.00004. It was like insanely cheap, but because you had to buy so many of them. And so first you bought the fiat, and then you traded your fiat in for the crypto. And then the idea is with that crypto, you could burn it or hold it or do different things with it and buy different art. And so there was a whole art emphasis around it. But my thought was I wanted to produce art or try to do something to get other artists to do art kind of in the world and in the theme that I was creating. And so that was kind of the intent behind it, was around like generating art and working with other artists. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, I can tell from then what I've seen you release on Bitcoin that there's always a lot of thought, there's a lot of narrative and a lot of concept around it. So you were hanging out in the Asprey studio, you were a moderator, I love it. Do you remember the exact moment where you found out about ordinals? When was it? And then I guess, what really piqued your interest, and then how did you really deep dive into it?
I remember, it was Dubai. He was the community manager over that. He knows tons of people in the space. I guess I don't know who he heard about it from, but it was like very early on. And so I remember there was talk of it, and that was like very, very beginning. And people were like starting to inscribe stuff on the chain. But I wasn't really messing with it at first. Like it just seemed complex. I'm like, I don't want to deal with that. Like, there's all these different, if you think about like the history that we've all been through, like there's always these things to do, right? There's always all these different avenues you can chase in the space. You got to like learn these different things or learn these chains or like farm this or farm that. And so I was kind of like burned out on that. I'm like, I don't want to deal with it. And so I didn't do anything. But eventually, as I was kind of seeing more and more, and I was looking into it a little bit more and a little more, I'm like, I really like this. And so really kind of as a group there at Asprey, like we started all getting into it together, like very early on. So, so that's what made it fun, because we all knew each other. We all enjoyed each other. So we were kind of getting in stuff together, when it first came out. And it kind of just, it snowballed from there. Yeah.
And it's almost 2026. When you first thought about creating art on Bitcoin, what was the first thing that you put? Was it some of your one of ones? I haven't checked the timestamps, or was Radio Waves the first project that you brought?
Yeah, Lightwaves was
Lightwaves. Sorry, Lightwaves.
Yep. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, which is creative coding, computer art. Computer art's actually a lot older than people realize. Obviously, it's been around. Oh God, I don't want to get this fact wrong, but like since the 50s or 60s.
Yeah, I think the 50s.
Yeah,
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, which is incredible. And now we've obviously got a way to tokenize it to make it permanent. I know I've spoken with Hufka around his early computer art and how he had it on a USB, and the galleries wanted nothing to do with it, and he actually printed them out in a book, and he's actually now been preserving them on Bitcoin. So it's quite incredible to see computer art then to computer art now, and really like how similar it still is, but just the ability to do what you can do with Bitcoin and endpoints and on chain on ETH and whatnot. But yeah, how did you get into the creative coding aspect?
So in real life job, I worked at a bank, kind of higher level in the bank, in support. So I would do different stuff. So I would project management, and doing a lot with like data and analytics reporting. And so I started getting into SQL, because I always kind of wanted to learn how to code, but never got into it. It's you when you're getting into like really into like video games and stuff like that. I don't, it always kind of like interested me, and I've always been like computers and things like that and technology. So it was just one of those things I was interested in, but never really pursued. So I had the opportunity through work, to kind of start getting scaled up in SQL, and so I did that. And obviously, it's very different, um, but but allowed me to get my feet wet, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot, and so um, that so it kind of just stemmed from that. You know, I you know I I've done a lot of like just playing around for me and creating things like on my my tablet, my iPad and stuff like that. So I've thought about doing stuff like that, but I don't know, with Bitcoin specifically. There's just something kind of different and special to me about like coding on it. Um, it's a very eloquent way to do it on Bitcoin with costs and things like that. You can do really cool intricate things, for a fraction of the cost and in the size. So it just kind of stemmed around that. And honestly, like I figured out there was things I could do with code a lot quicker than like trying to teach myself to learn how to actually like draw it and do stuff like that. So I'm like, oh, this is really cool. Like I can, you know, you can have it do all these different things, and like if you try to like manually do that, it would take you forever. And so I don't know, just kind of the combination of all those things just really appealed to me. And so yeah, I started like looking at like the coding train. Probably a lot of people have heard of that, like on YouTube. Like I was going through all those and working those steps. And then like AI started getting really big, and so like I started getting really big into AI because that like is a force multiplier. Um, and started using AI a lot to really help guide me and assist me through making stuff because it just allowed me to do a lot quicker. So yeah.
Yeah, it's an amazing tool, and there are so many resources out there. So it sounds like you were part of my use of the word resource again. It sounds like you were very resourceful. I've been scrolling through Lightwaves as you've been chatting about this. We can see that very sort of ethereal, futuristic, space-like. Uh, I don't know. At least that's how I perceive it. Kind of artwork. It seems like you kind of have brought your interest into this Genesis collection. Obviously, I know it's something that you are very proud of, and as you should be. Tell us about the collection, and bringing it to Bitcoin and seeing it come to life and seeing it. We can see that it's some pieces are I think they're all animated. Sorry, kind of like essentially like dancing and living on Bitcoin, forever, or whatever forever means in terms of however long Bitcoin lasts. But in terms of like on the spectrum, it's like very, about as permanent as storage gets. So, or the most permanent. So yeah, just talk to us about this collection and then we can have a look at what else you've created. But definitely something very special. I'm sure you hold it very close to your heart.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Yeah, so this, kind of everything within the Lightwave series really, you know, is part of a larger narrative and a larger story. And so before I even started getting in the code of this, I kind of built out that narrative. Um, and so I have kind of the framework through the entire series. So the intent with the series was this is going to focus on each form of light wave. And so like this first one, everybody calls it light waves, but really it's like light waves, visible light. Like this is the visible light, like light wave in the series. And then obviously the second one was radio waves, and then there's gamma rays and X-rays and all these different ones. And so the intent is to do a collection kind of focused around each form of light wave. But as far as the story goes, it's centered around kind of a world very similar to our own. We're like humanity's on this precipice of disaster, kind of through, pollution and war, and just our inability to just, love and respect our fellow man. Like somewhere along the way, we just lost sight of kind of what was important. And for me, it kind of mirrors somewhat, our lives today. And so like just on the brink of disaster, this like bright light shines in the sky, and it can be seen night and day. And that bright light in the story is the light waves collection. And so kind of those undulating lines that kind of come in and out and pulse, it's that kind of to me like signified like, light kind of like comes in and out and pulses a little bit. Like that was kind of part of that that description for me through it. And so it kind of represents that in the story. There's also like pulses in some of them, which kind of signified for me like there's something hidden in it, which was like a foreshadow to radio waves. The radio waves collection in that. So, this light hits Earth, in like, first humanity is kind of like in awe. They're like, oh, this is beautiful. But then they start to like, realize, okay, what's going on with this thing? And they start to investigate a little bit more and more, and then realize that within this light there's encrypted data in the form of radio waves. And so then that takes us into the second collection, radio waves, which is why I did the reinscriptions on radio waves. That when it's all set up like when you're in radio waves, and if you click the menu, there's a lot to radio waves. So you can listen to the audio, and there's traits. The audio has traded, so there's different ones, and that signifies the encrypted, like the audio sound of the encrypted signal of your radio wave in the light. Then you can decrypt it, and if you hit the decrypt button, and it takes you into your first reinscription, which is like an interface. It's like an alien interface, and you see, alien characters going, and they turn gold, and it unlocks, and that's getting unlocked by human DNA. Because in the story, they're like trying to decrypt this encrypted signal, and like they're having computers and supercomputers trying to do it and all this stuff, and like they can't crack it. And then like in the story, this geneticist figures it out that it was related to the human genome, but not any human genome, like genome of this rare blood type on Earth, which is a real thing called Rh null. And so in the story, there's less than 1,000 people, but I think in reality, there's like less than 500 or maybe less than 200, but worldwide, there's not a lot. And it's called golden blood. And so those are kind of the people in our story that have been selected to make this journey through space. And so that kind of represents all that. So that's why it's the DNA unlocking that interface. And so then you're going through the interface, and then it comes into like a quadrant screen where there's four other inscriptions. And there's the sonification, which is actual sonified sounds from space. So those are like actual sonified sounds. So like one's a black hole, there's like Chandra, and there's all these different bodies in space. And so you can listen to those, and that kind of gives you a clue into the path and the journey that your light wave took to get to you on Earth. So there's that. There's a blueprint how to make the ship. There's a star map of how to get there and some points along the way that we're going to be stopping. And then there's the DNA that kind of represents those selected to make that journey.
And so I've just been sort of flicking around, looking at them, and I've pulled up what you're talking about with the reinscriptions on chain via the Explorer. Just for people who don't know what a reinscription is, I guess give the high level. What are you talking about here? How does your artwork have other inscriptions that are tied to it? It's very special that it does. There aren't that many collections that do.
Yeah. So when you do your first inscription, an inscription is on your sat, and so you got to think of it like that. And so that's why if you have multiple inscriptions on a sat and you send one inscription, you're sending them all because they're all tied to the same sat, and you're sending your sat. So your sat's like your backpack, right? And you're sticking all these inscriptions in there, and they all go together. And so I thought, when I was building this, man, I can't even tell you. I probably had a stack of papers this thick that when I was working on scribbling stuff out, trying to figure this out, how to do it, because the thought of what really racked my brain was, okay, a reinscription has to come after the main inscription, right? That's how it works. You inscribe your first inscription on a sat, and then your reinscription is anything after that. So I was thinking, okay, how can I, from the main inscription, go into reinscriptions if the main inscription has to be inscribed first? It's kind of like the chicken before the egg conundrum. And so I was going through all these ways to figure that out. And I found a way to do it. And it worked. I tested it, it worked. And it's funny, I had some dev help from Greg with, he does a lot with LIFO. He gave me a more eloquent way to do it that worked out really well. That made it a little cleaner, and so we kind of tweaked my process a little bit. So huge shout out to him. He was huge in that because I was going crazy at that time near the end. But so that's what that is. So reinscriptions, it's any inscription after the main one, and so this one obviously has 6 reinscriptions. So we did 6 after the main one, and they're all navigable, meaning you can go into them from the main inscription, and then as you kind of see in the middle of the bottom one, that's the quadrant screen. And so the quadrant screen allows you to go into those 4 others, and then you can actually go back so that you can continue to bounce back and forth between any of the 4. So, and this is all code. Literally everything in here is code, except for the only thing that's not code in there is the galaxy thing in the star map. I was having a real tough time with that one, so I inscribed a PNG image for that one and kind of
for sure
mess with it a little bit, but literally everything else is code.
And as we can see on this screen, all of the work is parent-child. So for people who don't know what parent-child means, shout out to Casey. I love ordinals, and I think that he's done an amazing job with naming, but I think parent-child confuses people. I think that on-chain linkage is probably a beautiful way to consider it. So you can see all of the works are tied together. So, beyond our time, all the context is there. Kanetix has his full on-chain family tree or kind of visualization of all his work all in the one place, which I think is very special, and adds, again, we were talking about earlier, those kind of networks or decentralized kind of connections. If you've got a piece by Kanetix or anyone else who uses on-chain linkage, you're somewhat linked to someone else who owns it, even just through this on-chain provenance, which I think is something beautiful that people probably don't really reference as much. I obviously know that it's great because you know that the artist created it, but I think that almost connection to other people through ownership is very powerful and kind of reminds me of the kind of network states that Shrimipto and Jack Butcher talk about. So I just wanted to throw that in there. But, what it does show me, Kanetix, is obviously, and I think it almost, again, I am hesitant to put words in your mouth, but you said you sort of bring your full self. You're very emotional, you're passionate, which I love. It reminds me very much of myself as well. So when you bring something to Bitcoin like these collections, it's authentic, it's intentional, it's you. You really pour effort and energy and intensity into it to ensure that there's all of these like unique aspects to it. Sure, people can say, oh, it's to add value to it, but really it's, probably at the forefront is more so that Kanetix on chain is like how you want it to be represented, and then, people can decide the value or not. But long term, it's, most important that you feel comfortable. I feel, that your legacy is preserved.
Yeah, for sure. And I talk to people about radio waves, in the beginning, and even some people were telling me like this is a lot. You could probably do some different collections with some of this stuff, and I got where they were coming from, and I understood, and part of me agreed, but it didn't hold true for what I was trying to do. And at the end of the day, like I got to stay true to me, and I got to stay true to what I'm building. And so sometimes you got to do things that maybe don't make the most sense, right? Or maybe what do you think put you in the best position? Maybe I don't know, but it's just I have a vision, right? And I gotta it's like inside. I got to get it out, and I got to get it out right, because until I get it out right, it's just not done for me. And so like when I do something, like I do it 110%. It drives my wife friggin' crazy, because like when I get on something, like I get stuck on it, and I get like borderline, maybe a little compulsive. And so that's just how I've always been. And so like when I do these things, like it's gotta be right. And I will just keep at it until I feel like it's right. And there's a voice in me that I hear now. I've really kind of learned, this is more like a life thing, right? Like I think as we get older, we kind of we learn to trust that voice a little bit more, right? Because I think when we're younger, when we don't listen to it as much, and we get ourselves in trouble and we do something, like, man, this little voice there, they ought to listen to it, right? And as we start to get older and mature, like I think we listen to a little bit more and a little bit more. And so now I've learned like to really listen to it, because it doesn't steer me wrong. And so when I create, I try to listen to that voice, and it's a feeling for me. Like I know, like radio waves, I knew when I was done, and I just kept iterating and doing more until I felt like it was where it needed to be. And really, that's like everything I've created, and that's what drives me. Like I keep driving to that feeling.
Yeah, I really love that. I think bringing your best self, or your most authentic self to Bitcoin, and thinking about what can I do to really utilize the chain, or how do I want to be remembered, or we say at Gamer, preserve your legacy, or preserve your digital legacy on Bitcoin, and that can mean different things for different people, and I think that that's totally acceptable. I actually kind of like and find it interesting. I've made like on-chain mistakes myself, where I inscribe something, I'm like, whoops, I had a typo in my metadata there, I'm going to redo it. But I think that also shows that we're human, because in time, when people study the chain, we don't want to come across like we were just robots, yeah? Like people want to, it's like a stamp of humanity. And I think that that's, really special. And I think that that sort of shows that where we are in 2023, 2024, 2025, at our different ages and stages, and where we are in the world, there's all of these incredible and different things we can do on chain. One thing which was, I guess, different, not something that people had seen you create, and I loved it. And you said you had this kind of like gamut of different styles and ways and genres in which you created all through your, teenagehood, earlier life, was, yeah, the meme and propaganda 1-of-1 posters, which I think is awesome. A completely different change, exploring and utilizing AI in a different way, bringing that kind of like message, almost like I just said, we're showing where we're at in 2025 right now. It's a bit of a timestamp of how things are potentially feeling or conveying a message, and, preserving it on Bitcoin. Tell us about this poster, and then I'll flick across to the editions, and we can talk about how they're related as well.
Yeah. So, This is a nod. A lot of things in my life are kind of like a nod back to my past, um, which kind of give a plug back to light waves. The, the color modes in there was a nod to a lot of previous collections because I feel it's important to give nods to the past, because that ultimately is why we're at where we're at. Um, and so growing up, my favorite video game series of all time was Fallout. Like by far my favorite like RPG series. And so if you've played Fallout, it's a futuristic game, kind of like 1950s, 60s like vibe, but like futuristic, kind of like very similar to this. And actually at the bottom, it's kind of like the Fallout symbol in there. Like I kind of threw that in there in case like anybody was like a Fallout junkie like me. And actually, there's a series on Netflix now, I think, which was really done really well. I think it's on Netflix. Um, and so it just kind of speaks to that, right? And uh, I think it's interesting where we're going, because Bitcoin is this very like heavily it's a future currency, right? And there's all these technical things and um, all these advancements, and we're dealing with AI and all these different things. So it's like we're knocking on the door of so many possibilities and so many different things. And so this was it just felt right to me to kind of do that style and theme of this with Bitcoin, and kind of like, hey, welcome to your future. But the future really is unknown. And so there's a lot of that in there for me, like because for me this represents the Fallout series, which talks about nuclear war and like everything goes to crap. And so I think we're always walking a line in everything that we do, but between like right and wrong or good and bad. Like I think we have opportunities every day and every moment of our lives to make a conscious decision to do the right thing. And so it's just kind of for me a fun way to kind of tie all that in together. I love propaganda posters. Like I've always loved propaganda posters. Like, and so I've enjoyed. I've played around over the years and like created some different stuff, but um, I enjoy that creatively. Um, I will say the one thing I like it, but I also don't like it with code, at least for what I create, is like when I'm creating a project in code, that's like over a long period of time. It's a lot of iterations, it's building. Like that takes me a lot of time. It was so much fun to do this one because it probably took me like a week to do it. Like in the grand scheme, everything that was like so short to put that together. So like some of it's AI, some of it I went in there and drew and some different things. So it was kind of a mixture. Because I really enjoy doing stuff with AI. I think it's a really interesting medium to use, especially within the theme that I did this. And so it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to be able to just iterate and create something so quickly. So I definitely want to do more. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, well, talk to us about that different pace of creation, and then obviously I've pulled up the editions. Editions are very unique on Bitcoin. They can be done in different ways. Tell us about the way in which you created them. But yeah, first start. Well, that was a beautiful introduction. I think people probably infer what you're talking about, but just that different pace of creation, and then yeah, the ability to put out kind of like call it in real life. This is all real life now, isn't it? Digital's still real life, but in the physical world, or um, prints or posters, and it's almost like they are individually signed because of the way that they're set up on chain.
Yeah. So the creating, the iterating and creating for the week, that was great because it's just, for that week, it was a lot of I was quickly like moving through the process and I could see things change. And so that was that was very nice. Because sometimes when I'm coding, like some of my stuff gets so complex and with the use of AI, with some of the more like really complex stuff, um, it's just so technical and so complex. Like I kind of understand it, but I don't understand it, because there's a lot of intricacies to it. And so, um, sometimes I I always think of different thoughts, and so that's kind of me. Like I'm always like I'm constantly thinking, and so I'm constantly trying new stuff when I'm doing a project, and so it sends me off a lot of different offshoots, and like sometimes for people that code, things are so like baked in to like the framework of what you've done. Like you're trying to change something that just like inherently breaks so many different things. And so like there's been times I've been stuck on things for like over a week, and it just and I'm just struggling, trying to get through it. And so sometimes it's a lot. Um, and so with this, it was just nice to just have that consistent, moving forward, in working with my hands. Not that I mean coding counted your hand, you like typing and stuff like that, but like, to have my pen, right? And to be able to like do things with it and all of that. So it was really enjoyable because I enjoy using my hands for things. And that's part of what I enjoyed with art. And so it just felt really good to kind of get back to that, kind of the basics of some of that. So that was a lot of fun. Um, and then like regarding the additions, yeah, I tried to think outside the box a little bit. Um, and so I thought it would be really fun to do like a one of one and kind of make that like the centerpiece of this, and then the additions would all be delegates of that parent. And so so each of these are a delegate of that main parent, and then the parent, the one of one, um, is on a rare set, and I think these are on rare sets too. Did I put them? Did I put these on sequential rare sets?
I'll
Can't,
have a look while you're telling
I
us
can't
about them.
remember.
That's okay.
Yeah, I think I put them on Block 9 450s because I got a ton of those. And so, yeah, so I put that one on a rare set and just thought it would be fun to do an auction for that. And, if someone wanted something, a little more one of one, a little more custom than just your traditional edition. Like some people are fine with editions, and some people want a little bit more. And so to accomplish that, you obviously can't sell the parent to the editions by itself and have that the only parent, because then technically they could create more. And so
this is confirmation, by the way. I'm just pulling up this attributes here. So yeah, these are all on sequential block 9 450. Essentially the earliest sats ever in circulation, because blocks 1 to 8 locked away with Satoshi, assuming the keys are nowhere to ever be found.
Yeah. So that's how that was set. There's a parent. So over the one of one, I have a parent over the one of one, and then the additions are a delegate of that parent, and then there's two parents for the additions. So there's the one of one, and then the parent over the one of one, to ensure that the parent can never create any more additions in the collection. So I had to think through that,
Yeah, and that's what we're looking at here. You can see this again, this sort of like on-chain family tree that you can navigate through. And yeah, sorry, so they were the first sats not mined. I just had to do a quick research. I thought I was right. Not mined by Satoshi, mined by Hal Finney, assuming that Hal Finney isn't Satoshi, but who knows?
Yeah.
He is cryogenically frozen. So maybe we'll find out one day. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, super interesting way to do editions, because essentially like signed prints in the physical art world, having these delegates, which essentially means that they're all tied back to the parent and then parent child as well. They're signed by you. They're on chain. You own them. It's like owning one of the posters based on the original artwork. And I think that is a really elegant, beautiful thing about editions on Bitcoin. I didn't mean for this to be the focus, but harping on a little bit again on Schmipto and Jack Butcher, like I know a lot of artists are wary of editions, but I think one, it invites a lot more collectors into getting to know you and being able to own a piece by you. You know, there are people that can't afford a Jack Butcher 1 of 1, but own a Jack Butcher edition, and that is so amazing for them. And the same thing, you know, maybe they can't afford some event, you know, your work, Kanetix, and then they could pick up an edition, you know, just for example. But nonetheless, it's this kind of like network thing. You're creating more art. You're really like preserving your legacy and leaving things on chain that are just very quintessentially you. Just because you've created in one way doesn't mean you can't leave other parts of yourself on chain like this. And I think that is very special. I remember working through this with you when you were, or, you know, at least you presenting it to me as a concept or as an idea. I thought it was terrific. I was so glad to see you execute on it so quickly. And also, you know, it did super well, very quickly too, which is always a nice testament to the idea. But beyond that, it's just like again, leaving more of yourself on chain is something that you're passionate about. Must feel really nice.
It does. Yeah, it feels really good. Yeah, to be able to like have an idea, yeah, and then to be able to implement it and kind of see it through. And I like complex, you know, and everything that I do. I like doing things, trying to do things a little bit different, and so that's why I did the additions the way I did. I wanted to do it just a little bit different. I don't know if anybody's done it like that or not before. But to me, it made sense and was a little bit different. I thought, oh, this is really cool. Like this is a little bit different way to do it. And so I'm always trying to push my boundaries, stretch, you know, and learn and do different things. And so it was just, you know, it was just another opportunity to do that.
Yeah, certainly. No, there aren't that many collections that have done it. Certainly have done it with editions, but I'm glad that you did. What I'll pull up, and then we can talk about Ascension and, you know, I guess like things that you're working on is just finally for people who would like to have a look at more of your work and collect it and just kind of explore. Obviously, you can then get into the Explorer and have a good kind of bit of on-chain research, but you can jump onto Gamma and type in Kanetix and have a look at all of your collections. So that's just like a nice little overview. You know, we've talked about a lot of it, but not all of it. We never have time to talk about all of it. We could talk forever, but you know, and you know, we hope to see more, perhaps more collections or more added to it in the future. But you know, all of this, like you said, it's all related. Particularly the Light Waves series is this kind of like ongoing, unfolding story. Yeah, you know, for people who follow you on X, they should. If they don't, but you've been kind of like hinting at or showcasing or sharing Ascension. What's Ascension? You know, what have you been working towards?
So Ascension is the kind of the evolution of light waves, and so this was just something. It's an idea I've had for a really long time of just evolving the light waves. To me, light waves is always special. You know, that's my first collection, and so before I say this, I want to preface this. There's no wrong way to do anything, right? Everybody's free to do everything they want. But for me personally, like I didn't want light waves to be what their traditional art is, and that is like it's a singular thing, and then it gets put out, and it's just sits there, right? It's just, and that's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that by any means, but like I didn't want to do that. Like for me, like I wanted to, and that's why I built this story, and I have plans throughout this story to link back to multiple collections. So I want to keep it alive, you know, and evolve it in different ways. So this is one of those ways I'm going to do that. And so, you know, I'm going to be recursively calling holders individual light waves, and then those are going to get mapped to like different shapes. And so, you know, it kind of started out basic, and then, you know, me in my traditional fashion, like I'm like all over the freaking place and going deeper and deeper. So like I'm like super freaking deep in like stuff right now. And so I haven't really told this to anybody yet, but kind of where I'm sitting at now, and it's interesting because I have like a big long list of things I could do, and some of them are crazy, like really crazy ideas, and usually I kind of fall somewhere in the middle. Um, but kind of as it sits right now, um, it's going to start out probably with basic shapes, probably like a cube, a sphere, like a trapezoid, a triangle. No, not tetrahedron, I think, right? Yeah, which is a pyramid. And so start out with some basic shapes. So I've kind of built out um, the cubes, um, and your the cube will evolve in it like parent-child, right? Just like a huge tree. And I think there's like, I don't even know how many different shapes I have per cube, because you can do compound cubes where you take a cube and like you change it on the axis of the vertices and it makes like a different shape. And so I've gone down like that rabbit hole, which is, yeah, just crazy. And so I think I have something like over 30 different cube shapes now. And so with all these different offshoots, and so I'm kind of thinking at this point, um, it'll be an evolving process where you kind of randomly go through, and you'll be guaranteed to probably get so far, so you're not just at a basic cube. But based upon randomness and some other different factors, your cube could ascend and go farther than maybe somebody else's cube. And so it'll be probably based on block time, where different people have, because people ascend in their lives, right? And ascend doing things at different timing, right? And so there's going to be different timing factors for each one. And then I figured out how to, and I don't think anybody's figured this out yet. So I figured out how to, and I've tested it, it works. I figured out a way to call all the light waves so that I can determine how many light waves are within your wallet. And it takes a little bit longer. It's probably like 35 seconds. So there's a little bit of ramp up in the beginning. I'm trying to get that down as much as I can, but it just takes a little bit because there's 3,333 of them. And so I'm able to, through code, I'm able to take all that and then determine the holder's wallet and then how many they hold in their wallet. And then that would be like probably a multiplier. So like if you hold multiple light waves, you would get a speed boost. What I really like about that is it's all dynamic and live. So if at any point you transfer your ascension out or you sell light waves or move light waves, you would lose that speed boost. And depending on how much time's gone by, that could move your shape back multiple shapes. So it's all really dynamic. So that whole part of that's really cool. And then doing that, shapes I would want you to see the evolution of shapes. So what I don't want is be like go into your ordinal and you've gone through, let's say, 5 iterations of a shape just to see the last one. I don't want to do that. Like I want you to see the progression of each, and so I'm working on that. I'm working on a display thing that's really cool that has never been done on Bitcoin before. Something that I think is really cool, and so I've been iterating and playing around with that now, and so that's really cool, which has like led me down another road of like testing different like materials and things like that. So it's been really cool. It's really allowed me to kind of look outside the box a little bit with some different stuff, which is what I enjoy to do. Like I love to learn, and so yeah, it just allowed me to kind of play around with that. I don't know where it's all going to end at this point because I'm still kind of working through it, but that's where I'm at today. So who knows? Tomorrow it could be completely different, but at the end of the day, it's going to be an evolutionary process where your light waves are mapped to shapes, and then you'll get to see them evolve. You get to see these shapes evolve, and some of them look really, really cool with the light waves on them. Like some are really cool. And some of these shapes are that I've played around with are like mathematical equations for like explaining space and time and like the sixth dimension and things like that. And so you can turn math into shapes, when you're talking about scientific things like that. And so I've also been creating some cool stuff like that. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see how it all blends together in the end. But yeah, so that's where it's at.
That's exciting. You can really hear the passion in your voice just when you're talking us through it. And thanks for diving really deeply into that. For those who are listening, I think that they're going to get that would certainly pique my curiosity. I'm sure it will for others. So, how can people get involved? What do they need?
So yeah, you'd have to hold a light wave because it's for light waves because I'm mapping the light wave onto it. And so, yeah, so you just need a light wave, and it does need to be revealed because you can't ascend and show a light wave on shape if it hasn't been revealed. But you can reveal through Vivid's website, who I partnered with on light waves. So they have it through there that you can reveal. It's just there's no cost to do it other than just the fees through that. But yeah, so just that, and honestly, they're pretty cheap right now. I think it's like $15, I think, right now for one. And so, yeah, so it's really cheap to get on it. And I haven't done it yet because I want to get a little bit closer, but I think I hold a good amount in my team wallet. And so I'm going to be doing some collabs with some different communities. And I'll be gifting light waves to some different communities so that they can then gift those out for people to participate because then they'll have the light wave. And this could be really low cost to do as well to mint it. I don't want price to be a barrier. And some holders hold a lot. And so I don't want those holders that have a lot to feel a barrier like they can't mint them all or something like that. So I'm trying to find that sweet spot for everybody.
Yeah, I think that's a very sound way to go about it and to kind of like really. Oh, I just touched my microphone. I talk with my hands to really get that reach and have more people go along this journey, with you, Kanetix. Super exciting. It's been such more than a pleasure to finally chat. We've had a few hiccups along the way, getting together, and we had it happen today. I always enjoy our conversations, whether they're recorded or just when we've had a call. Big fan of what you do and just the way you approach everything. So thanks so much for spending the time, with us for this feature podcast. Is there anything that I didn't ask or any sort of like final closing thoughts that you'd like to share? I feel like we definitely went over a few things, but it's always hard to ask all the questions.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I think, just to kind of sum it all up, I think, for other artists out there, like just do you. And I think that's what I really learned over this last year. I've had some ups and downs through the last year. It's been a tough market for a lot of different artists, but I'm so thankful on it. I mean, honestly, like legitimately, I'm very thankful that I've gone through it all, even the tough, because I feel like it's brought me in such a good place, and has allowed me to really explore some of the things I thought were true, or question some things about myself, or question things about my process, and then why am I really doing this, and all these different things. And I feel like I'm just in such a good place right now of I just want to create for me. Like I want to create the things I love. And if people want to buy it, great. If they don't, that's okay too. Like I'm going to be okay either way. Like at the end of the day, like I want to put out stuff that I love and just hope that, to your point, like people want to come on this journey with me. There is a lot to share. I mean, I have so much to share and so much more moving forward. I mean, there's just a ton. And so I don't know. I just hope people come on board. But again, it's tough because mine is super complex, and I think I lose a lot of people, and I know that's a area of opportunity for me. Of trying to condense that a little bit better. In this, like, if you don't get somebody's attention, like 2 to 3 seconds, you lose them. Like, how do you do that when something takes 5 minutes to explain? So I've been working through that, but it's been a fun challenge. So but I really appreciate you, man. Like you and Gamma, you guys have been amazing. Such a huge support for me. Um, and I think, I talked about it. Like I took some time coming in as a partner artist in Gamma. Like I didn't want to make a rash decision because I think it's very important. Um, and you've just been amazing. You bringing me on board and making me feel welcomed, and all the support you've given me has been more than I can ask for. So yeah, I appreciate you.
Oh, that's very kind. Look, I appreciate it. I get a lot of pleasure out of it as well. It's what we do. It's who I am, and we can't do it without the artists. A lot of people need to remember. We said before, there's a human behind the PFP. There's a
Yep.
human behind the artist. Artists are humans. Humans are artists, and this space only exists. Well, the art side of the space only exists because of artists. If there were no artists, there's no platforms, there's no collectors. There's none of this. So, we thank you, Kanetix, and we're just glad that you love working with us, and onwards and upwards. And thanks for spending this time.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.